Hey everyone, I have access to a Windows machine, so we will get started here with Windows. So Mac users, this should work the same for you, and we will focus on using Visual Studio to access the terminal. So Mac users, you should have the exact same experience. So we start here in our assignment. The first step we need to do, you can load this link here. This takes you to what the assignment is. That's learning React.js. There's nothing you need to commit for sections 1 and 2 because she's explaining some of the basic parts of React. You should follow along with that. Once you get to
One of
video
the most
number
exciting
3,
tools.
this is where the work that you do, we are going to start pulling that, into Git and GitHub. So once you reach chapter 3, using Create React App, that's where you start following along here. Now you could go ahead and do this before, prep your work here, that's fine. So we'll go to this link, and this is the seed repo for our homework. So once again, this is providing the ESLint configuration. There's a git ignore configuration, and circle CI configuration is in here. So right here at the top, you just hit fork, and you'll choose your username. When you click that, it'll initiate the forking process. So that's just copying that repository over under your namespace. You can hit refresh. It should load up here. Again, this should be under your name. Do not use my repository. Do not use the MEJO 583 repository. So you fork it under your user account, and you will go to clone or download. And you can use this HTTPS URL, that's fine. If you have SSH set up, you can use that as well. So we're going to use the HTTPS URL. So you just click that little clipboard icon right there to copy it, and we're ready to clone that down. And so that's the second step. So the first step was to fork it. The second step was to clone your fork to your laptop. So I'm going to go down to the start menu here, and we're going to open up, sorry, we have to use the Cortana stuff's loading on my other side. Let's go Visual Studio, TUV. So we're using Visual Studio Code. Ignore the other Visual Studio stuff I have. So Visual Studio Code will load up. I'll make it full screen here. And at that point, we can just go into Terminal. We can do New Terminal. So this is running Git Bash. So you should see the Ming W64 there. And we're in tilde. So if we do ls, tilde is our home directory. You can see all the stuff I have in there. Clear will reset your view here in your terminal. So I'm just going to make a new directory for all of my work to go into. So I'm going to make a directory, call it MEJO 583. I'm going to cd into that directory, and I'm going to run git clone, and I'm going to just paste in the URL I've copied. Once again, it should have your username here in the URL. This should not be my fork of the repo, and it shouldn't be the main repo. So at that point, we can do an ls, and we can see that we have a directory called week 11 homework 2 in this directory. So that's perfect. That's what we want. And so I'm just going to close this file out. I'm going to close the terminal out, and I'm going to click the drawer up here. So it says Explorer, top left. If your view does not look like this, go File, New Window. Right, and so you can close that old window out, and you'll have a brand new window here. Again, close that untitled file, and just click on that. So your view should look just like this. And most importantly, you have not yet opened a folder. So as Amy figured out in class, and I glazed over that detail, this is very important, you're to click on that, what you just cloned, the week 11 homework 2 directory, right? So I put that in, I was in my home directory, and I made a new directory in here, MEJO 583, and this is what I cloned. So I just click on that and click select folder. So you see the window reloads there. So once again, this is another stop right here. And if your screen does not look like mine, make sure you go back and repeat that step correctly. So you should see week 11 homework 2 in the top of the tray here. And you should see circle CI, ESLint, git ignore, readme.md. So let's go back to Sakai. So we've said don't use glitch. Do not commit your work from chapters 1 and 2. commit early and often as you follow along with chapters 3 through 6. So now this is where you're back in Linda and you're following along, and she explains how to use Create React App, and she goes into generating a React project. And so if we follow along with her video, if I can find where we scrub over, she calls Create React App Bulletin Board. So you're going to complete the same steps, and you're going to do that inside Visual Code. So we're going to go Terminal, New Terminal, right? And so we're going to look at this path where it tells us where we are right here. So we're in MEJO 583, week 11, homework 2. If you don't see that, just do an LS, right? And so we only see the README. You can do an LS-LA, and that will show us all files. So, right, we're just comparing. We have a .circle CI, a .ESLint. Both of those files are right here. .git, .gitignore, readme.md. So everything's in place. It's exactly what we want. We're going to run the same command she ran, create React app, and she called it bulletin board. So I may not have Create React installed. So, right, so there's my first problem. Now, if you did not get this far in class, we talked about how to install this. She talks about how she installs it as well in the video. So we'll try what she says first. So we're just going to try an npm install-g. So we are installing globally Create React App. So once Create React App is installed, we should be able to hit our up arrow. I'm just hitting the up arrow on my keyboard. Try to run that command again, no dice. My other option is right here in front of this. Just say npx Create React App Bulletin Board. So now that everything's done, it lists that there are some tools, some commands here you can run. So I have yarn installed. If you do not have yarn, that is okay. This would say npm start. That's fine. So notice this last little bit here. We suggest you begin by typing cd bulletin board. All right, so that's what we're going to focus on first. So we're just going to plug that in, and we'll do an ls inside of here. And we can see we're inside this bulletin board directory. We can click the little arrow over here on the left and see all the contents. Notice node modules is gray. That's due to it being ignored by the gitignore. We have package.json in here. We don't have any dev dependencies, at this point. And so we're going to fix that. And so what we're going to reference over here, we have this Google style that we need to install. And I can show you how we get to that error, but we know that it already needs to be installed. So if we go back to where this repository came from, in MEJO 583 Spring 19, there's a repo called ESLint Circle CI. And in here, there's a command. You should not need to install ESLint. You should just need to run ESLint config Google. So we're going to copy the first part of this command, npm-i, so that's npm install, -- save dev, which means we're saving this as a developer dependency. Right? So we're just I'm going to clear my terminal here. So I'm going to start by pasting that in. So I'm going to go back to GitHub, and we need this Google configuration file. So we're installing that from npm. So we'll put a space in, and then we'll paste that in, and we'll hit enter. All right, at this point, we have ESLint configuration file from Google installed. So that's this ESLint config Google. Because we use -- save dev, we just want to look at this package.json inside bulletin board. So once again, notice the path here. We are inside week 11 homework 2. We are inside bulletin board. So if we expand bulletin board, we can notice package.json is green. We can click on that and scroll down, and we can see dev dependencies, ESLint config Google. So we've now added this configuration file as a dependency to our project. At this point, we can try what I had tried changing in class. So we can pop over to app.js and we can see there's no errors in here. We can go to output, click the output tab here, click the drop down. We can see what's running. So we can see ESLint is running. You can click on that and we have some information about what it's doing, where ESLint was loaded from, and how it's trying to configure this or lint this package. So the next thing we need to do is go over to our extensions button on the left hand side here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth button down. It says extensions. Click that. There's a list of enabled extensions. So a lot of you have Beautify installed. We did this early on before we switched to Glitch. So this is very important. You can come up here and type @installed. So it gives you a thing. You can click on that and you can see everything that's installed. So if you see Beautify in your installed list, click this little gear. Right, click manage and click disable for this workspace. So disable workspace. And then it says reload required. So we'll hit reload and Visual Studio Code reloads at this point and Beautify will not run. So now we want to make sure you see ESLint. If you do not see ESLint under @installed, simply search for ESLint. You'll see it here. You can click on it. There's an install button. So yours will say install, where mine says uninstall, and you install ESLint. So at that point, you have disabled Beautify for this workspace, and you will have ESLint installed. We're going to go back to our files, and if you remember what we talked about in class, we need to tell this, the way we're linting this code, we need to tell VS Code that we want to use this as our configuration file. We want to use this .eslint.rc.json. So on Mac, that's going to be go up to the top and hit code and go down to preferences. On Windows here, we're going file, preferences, and we want to open settings. So once we've opened settings, notice there are two tabs, user settings and workspace settings. The first setting we want to check is under user settings, extensions, ESLint, and we just want to check this box, auto fix on save. So that's what we want. The next setting, we want to go under workspace settings, right? So all we're doing, we've switched this tab, click on this other tab, and we want to find under extensions again, ESLint, right? I'm going to close this so we have a little more room. You scroll down under ESLint, and there's ESLint options. And we're going to click edit in settings.json. So at that point, we have this new file is open here. We'll hit enter. And we are going to fill in ESLint.options. Then there's a colon. This is an object. And we are going to tell it the config, if I could type, config capital F file. Config file is .eslint.rc, .json. And then we're going to hit Control S to save. At this point, Mac users hit Command P, Windows users Control Shift P. All right, this is our command palette. If you hit Windows users, if you hit Control P, notice it looks a little different. You just put a greater than sign in front of that. So Control P and then a greater than sign or Control Shift P, right? And type in reload, and you can see there's a few options here. Highlight, mine's at the top, yours may not be. Highlight reload window and hit enter. So the window will reload. We will now see there's this VS Code directory. There's a settings.json file. We have it in here. It's saved. We're going to expand bulletin board. We're going to go to source. We're going to click on app.js. And at this point, down here in the bottom, right, you see my stuff highlighted in red. The very bottom left of your screen, you can see warnings. I believe that's up here as well. You go view, and you can click on problems, right? So this takes you to the same place. But let's look at something. We click on output here, ESLint output. Once again, we can see how it's running. So it's loaded. We see under problems, strings must use double quote. Right? All we have to do at this point is hit Control S, save that file, right? Because we changed the setting to auto fix on save. And so at this point, this file has been fixed. Now, in terminal, so I'm just clicked over there in the bottom. If this was closed, right, that's up here, terminal, new terminal. I'm going to just run a get status, right? And so VS Code is in here. It's not the end of the world if you commit this for this project. But what I would rather you do is at the root of the repo, right? There's 2 get ignores in here. So pay attention to that. Close this up, not inside bulletin board, but just inside the top level directory. There's a get ignore. And just at the very top of this file, drop in .vs code, right? And we'll put a little comment here. Don't include VS Code workspace settings, all right? And we'll hit save. Once we hit save, notice .vs code turns gray. So we'll come here, back over in the terminal view, get status, right? So now we see our get ignore has changed, and now we have our project down here, bulletin board. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. So get add bulletin board, get add dot get ignore, and we're going to run get status. So now we see all these new files that it's ready to commit. So we'll get commit -m started chapter 3. Oops. And at that point we can run a get push. It's popped up in a window that you can't see on my side, so I'm just logging in to GitHub. It has asked for my username and password. So I hit log in. Now I'm authenticated, we've logged in, and it's pushed. At this point, we'll open a new tab. Well, actually I already had it open, I guess, on a tab. We're going to circleci.com. So you'll come to CircleCI, you will click Go to App. At that point, you will go to Add Project. You should see Setup Project next to your Week 11 Homework 2. Again, make sure you're under your name here. So we'll click Setup Project. Linux and Node, those are correct options there. And then you can click Start Building. And at that point, it'll launch your first build. And when you push to get, after the fact, when you push things to GitHub, it'll fire off these builds, and you'll be able to come and see it, and probably email you as well if your builds are passing or failing.